Hey guys. Well, if you've ever wondered why blacks continue to vote Democrat Party every single time for maybe over half a century now, I've got some answers for you. Even after the war on poverty, the poverty levels have never improved. So what is it that the blacks feel that the Democratic Party is doing for them that 90 something percent of blacks before Trump always voted for the Democrat Party? Well, I'm going to explain to you in real layman terms so you understand. I'm Kathy Chamberlain, reporting from the Deplorable report. And I'm going to talk to you about Alinsky, Saul Alinsky Tactics. Now, he had 13 tactics, as many of you may know. And in my book, Rules for Deplorables, a primer for fighting radical socialism, I speak about these 13 tactics. I take one per chapter. So by popular demand, I've been asked to do a video series, and I'm starting that right here, right now. And you're seeing the first of 13 segments to the Alinsky Tactics. And the first one I've decided to do, since we're getting so close to the elections here, is regarding voting. And tactic number one is an interesting tactic because it's kind of an illusion. But that tactic is power isn't only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. And the Democrats are incredibly good at making others think that they've got power, even if they don't. So to build their power, Democrats have intentionally, throughout the last 5+ decades, they've intentionally been plotting for the black vote, to vote for the Democratic Party. And oftentimes it was done to the minorities' detriment, but they didn't care. They had little concern for the improvement of the inner city lives. They just pretended that they did. And I'm going to share with you how that happened. Now, Alinsky himself wrote the 13 tactics to transform our country to socialism, but the real strategists were a couple called Cloward-Piven, Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven. They were sociologists back in the 60s. And they wrote a series of strategy papers, and they were all about overwhelming our welfare systems and improving the poverty. And they actually wrote one on voting as well. And that one led to the motor voter law, which was passed in 1993 by Bill Clinton. And what that one was all about was really kind of shocking. But this is what, I'll explain that in a second, but this is what Cloward-Piven actually wrote. They said that the Democratic leadership is alert to the importance of the urban Negro vote. And by the way, Cloward-Piven never thought either party, neither the Republicans nor the Democrats would join them in such schemes to try to win a power block of the inner city vote by promising them a bunch of stuff, free stuff. But they were shocked when to come find out that the Democrats actually went in on the scheme with them. So this is what they continue to say. They said that many of the legislative reforms of the Great Society can be understood as efforts, however feeble, to reinforce the allegiance of growing ghetto constituencies to the National Democratic Administration. While the black community was growing more restless due to inaction by the Democrat Party, small concessions were keeping these minorities at bay. So they would just feed them little tidbits just to get their votes, in other words. They continue on by saying the legislative measures to provide direct income to the poor would permit National Democrat leaders to cultivate ghetto constituencies. This is well understood in the Democratic Party, by the way. They said if organizers can deliver millions of dollars in cash benefits to the ghetto masses, it seems reasonable to expect that the masses will deliver their loyalties to their benefactors. At least they have always done so in the past. So this was their scheme for decades already. Just give them a little bit over here and they'll vote for you. And if once they start getting restless, give them a little bit more. Throw a few other tidbits their way. So Cloward-Piven also created the blueprint for doing to the voting system what they had previously done to the welfare system. And that is that they flooded the welfare system with a bunch of minorities and poor people, white people too. And in order to flood the system, overwhelm the system, they threw all these people on the system, figuring that if they could overwhelm welfare, for example, then people would look to the government for more help, and the government would have to step in and give them guaranteed annual incomes. That was the whole plan from the beginning. So it's important that we really understand this. But with the motor voter law, they intended to actually flood the polls with millions of voters, creating chaos in our system. The result would be a catastrophic, this is their words, a catastrophic disruption of America's electoral system and massive chaos, leading to basically a distrust of our election system. That's what we're seeing go on today. So the motor voter bill was passed by Bill Clinton in '93 with Cloward-Piven in presence, because they were basically the authors of the whole concept of the bill. So listen to what the new law, this new motor voter bill, actually created. It eliminated controls on voter fraud. So it made it really easy to register, but very difficult to determine the validity of new voters or new registrations. The states were required to provide voter registrations to any person who showed up at the Division of Motor Vehicles to renew a driver's license or to apply for welfare or unemployment. So they made it really, really easy for to flood the voter rolls. And the worst thing is that the examiners who signed these people up were not allowed to ask for any kind of ID or citizenship ID cards. The states had to permit mailing voter registrations. That's when all that kind of got started, which allowed anybody to register without any personal contact with an electorate official, an election official. The states were also limited in pruning deadwood, is what it's called, people who died, moved, or had been convicted of crimes from their rolls. So this started many, many years ago, back in the early 90s. The motor voter bill caused voter rolls to be swamped with invalid registrations signed in the name of the deceased, ineligible, or non-existent people. They didn't care. Unprecedented levels of voter fraud followed. And that's where all of our voter fraud began. And it's been getting much, much worse ever since. You heard of Acorn. Barack Obama actually was a community organizer for Acorn. They eventually got shut down, and many of the people that worked there were convicted of felonies for voter fraud. So that's why we got to show up in 2020 in November 3rd, folks. We're getting awfully close. And share this with as many Black friends as you've got, because they have no idea they're being used in this way. And if they did, I'm pretty darn sure they would start seeing the pattern and understanding for themselves what's at stake, because President Donald J. Trump has cared about them. The Democratic Party has not been their friends. But guess what Trump has gotten accomplished for them in just the short 4 years he's been in office, compared to the half a century that the Democrats claim to be helping people in the inner cities. He's lowered unemployment. He launched a program to help the HBCUs, that's the historical Black colleges and universities. So he started Pell Grants to help a lot more otherwise unable to afford these colleges. He started the First Step Act, which directly helped so many prisoners, and mostly minority prisoners, get back into society and reduces the recidivism rate. And he created opportunity zones to help inner cities. That is huge. The Democrats never did any of this stuff, and Black people have to stand up and start asking why. But he started real programs to truly empower minorities. So to Trump, it isn't about what power the enemy thinks you have. It's about truly helping the American people. So make sure to vote on November 3rd, folks. And check out my book, Rules for Deplorables, at Amazon. It just recently hit number 14 on Amazon's top 25 list in government. With over 400 footnotes, you're sure to learn something new, believe me. And don't forget to subscribe down below on the YouTube channel here so that you can continue to get my future recordings, my videos, because I'm going to be discussing the rest of the tactics 2 through 13 in my future videos. And you'll want to learn everything you can know about Saul Alinsky tactics, because remember, Cloward-Piven built the actual blueprint for the strategies for transforming our country to socialism. But Saul Alinsky's tactics are the vehicles by which the Democratic Party is trying to get us there. So we can't fight back unless we understand those tactics. Thanks, folks. I'll see you on the next one.